Hello, hello. This is Christina Barr. You're watching Black Tea News. Hello, hello. Welcome to Black Tea News. I'm your host, Christina Barr, and today we're going to be talking about the outrage that's surrounding JD Vance, the VP pick from Donald Trump, and some comments that people are taking out of context, but they're hard for a lot of people to grasp anyway. So, people are just going to be offended if they're going to be offended. But if you're on the right and you're against people who are basically commies, but buck up, I guess. So we'll be talking about that, and also the continuation of the media really trying to cover for Kamala Harris. And there's one thing after another that just keeps happening, and there's so much that they're trying to memory hole that it's pretty insane. And I know they glossed over stuff with Obama, but to be truthful, there wasn't as much stuff that was kind of out in the open with Obama. With Kamala Harris, she ran for president before. We have so much on her, and she was the vice president. She was put over things like being the border czar, and now they don't want to say she was a border czar, even though she was called that, reported that. She was condemned by the Congress, them acknowledging that title of a border czar and her failing. The wiki page has been edited where it said she was a border czar. It's just really wild. But now people are trying to say that it's false or fake news that Donald Trump said that she helped to bail out dangerous people, when it's the same network making that accusation on Twitter literally asked Kamala Harris about it in the past. So it's just be prepared to be annoyed this whole entire election season. At least it's not an entire year, I guess, of the fawning and the gaslighting, but be prepared to be ready to debunk stuff, because folks are really annoying, man. They're so annoying right now, and the media, shame on them. Shame on them. I mean, they did it with Biden covering for his condition, and they forced him out, and now they're like, oh, sweet man had ice cream. He gave us ice cream on his sweet little farewell address. He's such a hero. And now they got Kamala in, so now they're going to be all sweet to her and as mean as possible to Trump. It's nothing new. It's just something we have to overcome. We have to overcome and talk to our neighbors, our friends and family and so on, and really talk about her record and the type of person that she actually is. So before we jump into everything, I want to encourage you guys to go to blacktnews.com, check out different content on my website, different articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation at blacktnews.com/donate. It does cost a stream and run my website, all the stuff you guys can support. I appreciate it. And I do need some support here. There's some things that I need to get fixed and changed and stuff. So if you can support, God bless you. I appreciate it. I understand if you can't, times are tough for many of us. So I just put it out there. Bible says you have not because you ask not. So you know what? I make sure that I at least ask. If you want to give via stars, you can do that on Facebook. On YouTube, you guys can do super chats. I'm sorry, we can hear a dog in the background. It's my neighbor's dog, and they're very chatty today. But you guys can support that way. You guys can also go to the store and check out different merch that's there. And you guys can also check out different books that I have. I have 18 altogether on Amazon. You can just search my name, but there is a link in the description where you can find my stuff. So I was going to change out the intro today, and then I noticed that my D drive was not being noticed on my computer, so I had like a little panic. It's still not resolved the issue, but I had to jump on here, so that's why I'm a little late and a little frantic because my computer's my baby. And luckily, recently I did move like basically all the video files that was on my video drive, but I can't remember what all is on it, what was all on that drive. So I mean, it was my main storage drive for this machine, so I just hope it's okay because because we opened it up the other day. So I hope we just accidentally unplugged something and I didn't destroy my, well, not totally destroy, but didn't just destroy the drive or destroy something in the computer. It's just all a lot going on this week. You guys know I had to do my car battery died earlier this week. I had to fix that, get that paid for, and it's just a lot. Just pray with me. Oh, just pray with me. Anyway, let's hop to it. Let's talk about this JD Vance stuff first. JD Vance has been ragged on for a minute now, and people were saying that he called cat people, single mothers, cat ladies, and I mean single women who are above their 30s, crazy cat ladies, and was questioning like why, they had so much stake in the country and so on. And I folks are mad because he mentioned something about IVF, and I don't understand why so many people from the right side are deciding to focus so much on this and really distract from much of the race. Now, JD Vance wasn't my favorite. I questioned the pick myself because he doesn't open up the map at all. I thought there are other people with better experience that would lend some more, that would calm some people's fears or alleviate people's issues or whatever. Um, I the top three was Burgum and Rubio and JD Vance. None of them really got me excited at all, but to me, Rubio seemed to make the most sense out of them all. I thought with JD Vance, especially with him saying things earlier about Trump, that it could lead to it's an unnecessary shot in the foot, because you can just take things that he said, not just like in interviews with the paper, things that he said that's on TV, on video, that they can play in ads, saying bad things about Trump, like Trump's VP said this, and we can all go, well, he said that years ago. He has a great explanation as to him changing his mind, which a lot of people change their mind. Ben Shapiro used to be a never Trumper, right? And he wasn't going to vote for him because he thought Trump would do too much damage or whatever. So he decided to not vote, and he lived in California, so his vote wasn't going to mean anything anyway in the grand scheme as far as president, because obviously California was going to go to Hillary Clinton. And then Trump appointed Gorsuch to the Supreme Court, and so then Ben was happy, and he wore a Trump hat on his show, happy to be proven wrong. So there's a difference between never Trump and people who just are like anti-Trump or don't like Trump. And then there's also like never again Trump people. But there are never Trumpers that are like Bill Kristol, who have totally warped their brains and everything they once claimed to have stood for. Like, if you're gonna say you don't like Trump, I get it, but to so openly like support Kamala Harris instead, that's puzzling. Like, I don't understand how you're on the side of I don't know, I was gonna say liberty, but any sort of conservative values when she's basically a commie, guys. So as left wing as they can, basically get. And that I just don't understand how people can sell their souls so easily just because they don't like somebody. I can understand the position of never again Trump people who don't like what he's done and are concerned about, I don't know, where the direction of the party is, because going, and ultimately what that would mean for the country, since it has gone to the left. It just has the platform change, for example. um so I get those people, but the never Trump people I don't understand. But JD Vance, I think he identified as a never Trumper, but obviously he was open to changing his mind, and he changed his mind. Now some people read that as he's an opportunist. um Maybe he is. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know him like that. But it is reasonable for people who didn't like Trump to change their mind because he delivered on things that maybe they didn't think he would deliver on, and he did a better job than they initially thought he would be able to do. So, totally reasonable that people would change his mind. He has a pretty good answer when people confront him about his past comments. However, his past comments, no one's going to be there to fact check them when they put it on an ad on TV. You know, the media has no interest of giving them any kind of grace at all. No interest in any sort of grace for this guy. So I would just be pretty darn careful about how people want to talk about JD Vance from the right. Now, people are very mad about some comments that he made, and about saying things about women being older, being crazy cat ladies, and so on. And people not having children, and people who don't have children deciding like the future of the country. And people have taken that personal. Now, it's an interesting conversation. Let me just add some context to kind of what he was saying a little bit so you guys know. But there's all kinds of folks upset about it. Like Meghan McCain has been railing against it for a few days now. Um, one of my best friends did rounds and rounds of unsuccessful IVF, wanting to have a child. It is still painful to talk about. This childless woman comment by JD Vance has made so many waves with so many different friends of mine for its insensitivity and cruelty to women. And it's I it's not just women on Twitter voicing their opinions that are upset. Like there's real people being upset about JD Vance. Like this really did cause waves and panic. Um, but he, in his different comments, he's not talking about people who cannot have children. So here we go.
Now, let me do the necessary throat clearing because I do think it's important. Look, a lot of people are unable to have kids for very complicated and important reasons. I know, good friends of mine who have struggled to find the right girl, find the right guy. There are people, of course, for biological reasons, medical reasons, that can't have children. The target of these remarks is not them. It's important to point that out. There have always been people like that who, even though they would like to have kids, unable to have them. Let's set them to the side.
Okay, so Megan's comments here don't apply to her friend who did the rounds of IVF and so on. Which I have opinions about IVF because I didn't realize how old his comments are from 2001, because I talked to someone and they said, oh, people are really mad about his comments about IVF and other stuff like that, and I'm like, that doesn't seem to be making a lot of sense to me, because he basically said he supports the abortion pill, and if Trump is pro IVF and he's willing to say he supports access to the abortion pill to appease Trump, I don't know why he would be saying stuff about IVF now, because that didn't make any sense to me. But from folks on the right, though, who are upset, like Megan here, Megan is pro-life from my understanding, and I've seen her like stick up for IVF, like when the I think the Mississippi case came out, and she's like, "Oh, this is going to upset a lot of people. There's a lot of people who use IVF." She's right, and I don't think a lot of people have thought about the ethical implications of IVF. But if you believe life starts at conception, that's not really a belief. That's just the truth. You might not value life at conception, but my existence began at conception. Hers began at conception, right? Um, IVF, like the fertility industry, kills way more babies than Planned Parenthood. Just to be frank. So there's genuine reasons why folks are raising their eyebrows to the industry, which, reaches out to surrogacy and other stuff, single old men buying renting wombs and having children to raise as a single person, all this stuff. Like there's lots of weird stuff going on, um that's like an outgrowth of this. So people trying to protect it so much and be like, no restrictions, that's definitely not the route to go. And I do realize it's a very emotional conversation for a lot of folks to have, but at some point in time we have to have it because there are ethical implications with all this stuff. But JD Vance's point that people are very upset about when he's talking about people who are older who don't have children and them being in the political landscape or whatever, he was saying that the Democrats have given so much power to people who don't have an investment in families so much. And essentially, I guess there's not enough skin in the game for them, or their focus on their families. The focus on families puts lives in a different perspective than folks who are focusing on their career to get ahead and devoting so much time to getting ahead with their career, where it's a life that's driven very much for their self-interest versus your life is driven for for you to take care of your children and the next generation and what's going to happen after you're gone and their kids and their kids and so on. It's just a kind of a different headspace and a different landscape. And I mean, there's truth to what he's saying. I don't He's not saying that if you don't have children and you're above 30 that you can't vote or something like that, to my knowledge, but there's just a lot of different mindsets going in when you have families versus when you don't. And that is true, because if you want to see a big divide in as far as voting, single women, that's a lockdown for like Democrats. Like that's a huge difference. Like if you want to guess whether a woman is voting Republican or Democrat, if she's a single woman and she's not married and stuff, don't have kids, you could, it's a good chance that she's voting Democrat. Now I'm plus 30. I'm single. I don't have kids. I don't like cats. I don't like animals at all, actually, but they're fine in animation. But no, I'm not an animal person, so I definitely don't have cats or anything. I'm not a cat lady. But and cat lady, like, people understand that there's someone you envision. It's not just someone who likes cats. There's like a weird sort of fascination with the cats that goes along with that. He's talking about a particular type of person, not everyone who has a cat. So I think there's some truth to JD's statements, and he made them before, like some time ago, and they're resurfacing, and it's fair game to talk about and use in a debate. And as these people are running, I don't know how much they vetted him and how much they just pushed him, because he's definitely, made a lot of comments that would obviously be brought up. And I do think someone like Rubio would have been like a cleaner pick with more to gain. But they picked him. So if you're on the right and you're crying and you're upset about comments that JD Vance made, the Democrats don't like focus on this kind of stuff. They're like full on gaslighting folks about what Kamala's actual words are, their intent, their meaning, her how she served, her jobs, what she did or didn't do. They're totally trying to rewrite history on her, literally deleting stuff, rewriting articles, editing stuff, adding editors' notes, doing everything that they can to prop her up. And McCain's been on a tirade for days about JD Vance. Now, I don't think she's actually going to vote for Trump because her issues with her dad and Trump, which gosh, I understand her not wanting to ever vote for Trump, but you can at least be anti Kamala, which I'm sure she is, but I think this fascination with JD is a little with what he said is a little it's not a big it's just not a big deal. It's just not a big deal. I don't think there's a again, I am a woman who's single and 30 and no kids, and I'm not offended by his statements. I understand that he's talking about a particular mentality that is not focused on family, that's anti-family, and how those kinds of folks have such a firm kind of grip on the leadership of their party versus like Republicans are supposed to be the party of family values and so on. So and they have a negative view as family as a unit, as an entity, and they even see that the government is supposed to kind of have a say or a bit of control in the family as opposed to the family being able to thrive on its own in society. You know, like in Michigan, they had the during the midterm season, there was the a post that the Democrat Party put out saying, whoever said that parents are supposed to have a say in what their kids learn, the society's supposed to decide. And that caused a big uproar. And when I first saw it, I had to double check to see if it was real, because it was such a bad, terrible thing to say, like politically, ethically, and so on. I at least had the decency to doubt that they actually posted this crazy thing. So sure enough, they posted that crazy statement and it was up for a while. And they got enough backlash that they took it down. But the fact that someone who works there would be crazy enough to post that, but we know that that's what they mean, that they're offended by these parents having control or being involved and not just kind of surrendering them to these weirdos who want to, you know, rewire the minds of these kids, experiment on these kids, damage these kids, use these children as sacrificial lambs to their gods of of the woke mind virus, as you know Elon Musk was talking about the other day. You know, there's a difference when you have a different orientation as far as your mindset toward your family and not. So I don't know if he like spoke everything in the most eloquent sort of ways, but I just don't see the point in like railing on it for days and being so ticked about it. So Kit Kat said that she's with me, that she's childless, have cats, not offended by his comments. So you know, I'm you know, I'm not too like, I know JD has a impressive story and I haven't read his book, I haven't watched his Netflix movie and stuff, but you know, I'll just kind of take, you know, give it to him that he has an impressive life and backstory and where he's come from and so on, and I'll give it to him on that. But you know, I'm not excited about the guy. I think most people Trump picked him, and people said that, oh, this is to show that Trump is very competent about him being the top of the ticket, that he's the guy, and JD Vance is about ensuring kind of the MAGA future, you know, and which I don't know if he has that kind of charisma to take over MAGA like that. Like I've seen a couple snippets from his rallies. I don't know if he's got it, but to be frank, but he doesn't I don't think he really adds anything to the ticket. But Trump is the driving force here, and that's what they designed, or that's what they've settled with. And but they just got to go out and push. It is what it is. That there's a nomination. There's people saying that, oh, Republicans want to replace him, or they should replace him. They already did their convention. They already did the nomination. We can't just keep pulling people out when we don't like them. When Trump has had all this time to think about it. They settled on him. Everybody nominated him. He said the speech. It's over. It's done with. So they have to just push hard and debate and fight and win. They should just be out there hammering Kamala on her record. And people want to obsess over some comments that he made some time ago, while Kamala Harris is just perpetually awful. Like, I don't know why we allow people to dominate the media and the Democrats to dominate our headspace so much with their narratives that they push. I'm not saying that if you're not upset that you can't say something, because you all know that if I'm upset with Trump or somebody, that I will voice my opinion. But I don't know. I just don't think it's that deep. But Megan is entitled to her opinion, especially I see that it's, hurting her with, she mentioned her friend with the IVF and so on, even though those kind of situations are excluded in certain comments that he made. But I would again urge her to actually look into the ethical implications of IVF. Whenever I hear someone say "crazy cat lady," I think about the scene in Death Becomes Her. Goldie out in a fat suit eating cat food out of a jar next to 20 something cats. I think that something like that definitely comes to mind. Um no one means infertile women when they say crazy cat lady. That's true. What I think here, crazy cat lady, I think about the episode of The Simpsons when there was a crazy woman who I think, I don't know if she was homeless or what, but she just came out of nowhere and just literally started throwing cats at people. So that's what I think of, or these people who don't have, I mean, there's people who treat their animals like they are their kids, and they treat them as if there's like a similar human value as their cats. Like they're like, you can call them your baby, but if you actually like elevate them to that sort of status, like people are showing pictures of their babies and you're like, here's my cat. It's like, that's not the same, you know? Um, but anyway, let's move on. So Kamala Harris, there's people who are obviously going to vote for her because she is a woman of color. There's this panel where this guy just lit into someone who admitted that they were going to vote for her because she's a black woman, quote unquote. And I just want to play this clip because I just thought, this dude stood on business.
I'm gonna just be real honest with this. She's a black woman.
Yeah, because they skin folk, not Kim folk.
I think it goes back to what somebody was saying, where it's not voting for someone, but majority will vote for somebody else just.
Hold on. Let me line this out.
I think majority
is only because she a black woman.
Yeah.
Do you not see how that's a bad idea?
Elaborate.
Okay, so we're in 3 proxy wars with some of the most powerful leaders in the world. She failed at the border, in which we have an estimation of 15 to 20 million people illegally into this country. That is literally overtaking and bankrupting Chicago to the tune of over $400 million per year, and they are in a deficit. Oakland is going out of business. San Francisco ditto. California, $65 billion deficit. New York, they're literally cutting trash, in which they are the rattiest, dirtiest city, and they've taken up resources as far as free healthcare, free hotels to the tune of $600 a day. They're literally taking over your schools. Your taxpayer dollars are going to fund the migrant crisis. She was supposed to be in charge of this. We have a failing economy. Every single day I see people getting on the internet talking about $30 an hour is the new minimum wage, because inflation is fucking out of control. At one point, it was at almost 10%, depending on what city that you in. She has no policy, no record to stand on. One of the biggest things that she did in her career was lock up more black men than ever before. But we sitting here and vote her in office on identity politics. The very person that she was under as far as the president of the United States of America, she called him racist during a debate, which shows you how fake she is. And the only thing that we can stand on from a policy perspective is whether or not she's black and she's a woman. We did that during the Obama administration, and he didn't do anything for black people. As a matter of fact, y'all complain because the only person that he did, or the only group of people that he really stood for, is the alphabet community, and that's his landmark thing that he's still standing on today. So the only thing that we have to stand on is identity politics. That shit didn't work with Tiffany Henyard in Dalton, Illinois. It didn't work with Karen Bass. It didn't work with Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. It didn't work with Brandon Johnson, that then took over her position in Chicago. It didn't work with Andre Dickens in Atlanta. It didn't work with Eric Adams in New York. It doesn't work across the country. Every single Democratic city is a hellhole. And we sitting here talking about identity politics?
Yeah, so my sister said she's still going to probably vote for her. As soon as she said elaborate, it was already too late. Yeah, some people just want to vote for somebody because they are the same race. I remember when Obama was running and I was talking to a relative and I was laying out the issues with Obama and doing a pretty good job. And this is someone who has similar ethical values and same religious beliefs and so on. And they, you know, understood what I was saying, was very respectful, and was like, you see what you're saying, but right now, just like, Obama is saying stuff that just kind of speaks to me, and and there was, it was just that kind of vague response and no really justification. And I understand that there is like an emotional connection to people to want to make history in that kind of way. It will be history because she'll be the first woman, and she so you can say black woman, but she's also Asian and stuff too. I mean, so yeah, she'll check a lot of boxes if she becomes the president, and that makes people excited. A lot of people didn't get the chance to vote for Obama, that obviously can have a chance to vote now. So people are trying to make, in their eyes, make it like their Obama, which she's not that guy. She's not that guy. But I get it. It's not wise though, as he said, like he's trying to warn her. People did that for Obama. Like they thought Obama was going to do all this stuff for black people. And Obama, he I think he said like, I'm the president for everybody, which is true. And everybody should be the president. When they're the president, they should be the president for everybody. You shouldn't need someone who looks like you to get into office to implement good policy that's good for you and your family. That shouldn't be something racial or something, that involves your gender. Like someone should be the president for all people, for both sexes, red, blue, white, black, etc. But Obama did show special interest in doing things for the alphabet mafia. It was very proud to do that, was very proud to bully schools into allowing boys to use girls' locker rooms and things like that. He was very proud to do things like that. The things that we hear about today that the Biden administration is pushing with the gender ideology stuff, that garbage started under Obama. So if you kind of like, well, I didn't vote for, or maybe you did vote for him. I mean, there's a lot of people who are voting for Trump or were Republicans and still vote for Obama. And you're like, well, I don't agree with him all the time, but I still like the guy. Why? Like he did some wild stuff, and a lot of things that we don't like today that we see is so extreme are things that he laid the groundwork for. He had to be more subtle, obviously, but he laid the groundwork for him and his administration. And a lot of folks who are in the Biden administration were just holdovers. They move right over. They undermined the incoming administration with Trump, and after they got him out, they reinstalled a lot of the same folks. So voting for someone because they're Black, hoping like that they relate or they're going to do something for you, that's not the same thing. That's not the same thing. And people feel like because you're Black, they're Black, that they owe you something. People don't feel that way. And they don't owe you something. Again, you should be president to all people. But Obama had his favorites, obviously. Obama had his favorites. He was very proud to be pro-LGBT. Very proud. But for 8 years later, there are folks wondering, like, you know what? We support him and ain't nothing much happened for us. So it's a risk. As he said, Lori Lightfoot being Black didn't help nobody. The guy who took over didn't help nobody. It's not helping nobody. And they're still letting all these illegals come in, stay in the hotels, use up resources. Kamala doesn't think that they're criminals coming across the border. She thinks it should be a misdemeanor. She thinks that or should be civil, not criminal. She wants to make sure that they have health care. She compared ICE to the Ku Klux Klan. I'm not joking. I'm not joking at all. She has a terrible, terrible mindset about this stuff. It's just going to make stuff worse. So vote for Black no matter who, at your own peril. But honestly, if I don't know, John James was running for president, which he hasn't been in Congress that long, but let's say it's a couple of years later or whatever, and he had more experience and he was top of the ticket. Or let's say Tim Scott. If Tim Scott was top of the ticket, with some of these people like, why I'm gonna vote for Kamala because she's Black. Would y'all be voting for Tim Scott because he's Black? Would you keep that same energy? Because a lot of these people hate Clarence Thomas on the Supreme Court because of his ideology. And they think he's some kind of race traitor, even though his life is very fascinating. And his political kind of philosophy and journey and mentality and the hardships that he had to go through and really struggle with and to get to the place where he is today is very fascinating. There's a documentary called Created Equal. You guys can watch it on Daily Wire. I don't know where you can watch it, but you can watch on Daily Wire. And a lot of people just misunderstand this man. But they hate his guts because he's conservative and they feel like he's a traitor because the media told him that told them that he's a traitor. There's no allegiance there with his Blackness with these folks. And I don't know how she feels about it. I don't know her political affiliation. Maybe she's just like in the fields for Kamala, and maybe she would do it across the board as long as they're Black, you support them. But that's not smart. That's not smart. Did you know that communists, they would recruit Black people to push communism? Like they would take like some real life grievances that Black people obviously had because people were racist and stuff, especially back in the day, and then they would recruit them into communism to try to be like a gateway for other people to get into communism. And then they would make sure that there was some kind of way that they would blackmail them or set them up or whatever. So if they ever defected from communism, that like maybe they set up a white woman to have some kind of affair with them. Like, oh, well, if you leave the Communist Party or whatever, if you stop being our operative and you try to turn on us, like we have this information about you and this white woman. So either you stay quiet or we're going to ruin you. Like, so they would do stuff like this. So Kamala Harris is just a brown face pushing Marxism. And we're just going to allow that to happen because she's brown. It will not help you. It will not help you. Let me a lot of people are talking about this equity clip that she talked about some time ago. See if I can find it real quick. Kamala Harris, she said a lot of things about the difference between equity and equality. So she's big on the. Isn't it so silly that people are mad about her being called a DEI hire, and she pushes this stuff. She pushes diversity, equity, and inclusion. I've heard her talk about equity more than like just about any other politician supporting this concept that's important, like where you end up, and that's what we need to focus on rather than making sure that there's a that the playing field is even, and that people have an opportunity to thrive instead of trying to rig the outcome itself. Gosh, I'm trying to find it. I mean, she's cut different ads with it. I know I saved it. Let me just search real quick. Okay.
It has to be about a goal of saying everybody should end up in the same place. And since we didn't start in the same place, some folks might need more. Equitable distribution. Giving resources based on equity, understanding that we fight for equality, but we also need to fight for equity, understanding not everyone starts out at the same place. So there's a big difference between equality and equity. Equality suggests often everybody should get the same thing. Well, that often assumes everybody started out in the same place, as opposed to equity, which is everyone should end up in the same place. And if you then understand not everybody started out in the same place, you understand some people need more. So we all end up in the same place, right? We are proud of the fact that equity is one of our guiding principles. Proud of the fact that we understand equality is important, but not everybody starts out on the same base. We see that people in our country are having an experience that is not equal. So when we talk about the work we are doing here together, it is recognizing that and being guided by this principle of what we must do in the spirit and in the interest of equity. To put equity firmly at the center of our economic policy. But no, if you look at the reality of who will benefit from certain policies, when you take into account that they're not starting at the same place and they're not starting on equal footing, it will directly benefit Black children, Black families, Black homeowners.
So, okay, so an issue here is that she just at the end talked about Black people. I mean, the question might have been directed about race, but people who might, when you just automatically look at things through a racial lens, And you're like, okay, well, black people need this or something. What about people in the same neighborhoods who happen to be white, who maybe don't have the same kind of, maybe they're in the same financial boat? Like when Biden first became president, they decided to give like special benefits to black farmers. And there was one farmer that sued the Biden administration, and he had like I think no feet. He had, because of a condition that he had. And so you had this white disabled farmer who's being discriminated against and disqualified from getting these particular benefits because he's white, but they call that equity, and them trying to reach out and do a good thing for black farmers. But why are you looking at things like particularly through the racial lens, as opposed to people need opportunity, people need help, so why don't you just help them where they're at? But they use race as their basis for their like class kind of warfare. My sister asked a question. She's like, what is this magical in place? I don't know. The gulag, I guess. The gulag. Yeah, it doesn't really make sense anyway, because you can start people off, even if you start everyone off at the same place at the beginning, it doesn't mean that they'll get to the end point, because everyone is different. Like me and my siblings, we're all different, but we have the same parents. We have, grew up together, lived together for most of our lives. We didn't, just gosh, when did we start moving out? Like 7-8 years ago. Like up until that point, everyone was basically living together. And we went to mostly the same schools. Some of us, had a little bit of a difference and moved to the school districts, but same parents, environment, same mama, same daddy, went to the same church, read the same Bible, but we're all different, even though we're all very similar and still share core principles and values. Like we're all in church and other stuff like that, and involved very much in each other's lives. We're still very different. We have different goals. We have different drives, different ambitions. And I'm very goal oriented and ambitious and self-determined myself. Other people need to be pushed and dragged. Some of my siblings, there are sometimes they didn't want to learn a new skill because they'd be made to do something. So a lot of my skills that I learned was because there was a need that needed to be fulfilled, like for the church or something. Like my dad was bad at graphic design, so I'm like, I need to make the flyer because he's gonna be really bad at it. So we have, even though we're like in the same environment and the same source of the ingredients came together to make us, we're still different. So so there's still a thing about human behavior. So even if you give everyone an even playing field, there's no way to make everyone end up in the same place unless you rig the system to take from some, to give to others, to redistribute, and you pick winners and losers to get them to the place where, yeah, at the end, they're all standing on the same platform with the same participation trophy, even though someone clearly should be the winner and somebody should go home with nothing. You can't just change human nature. You can just only change the iron fist that you rule with. So, Bernie Sanders, when he was on Bill Maher and someone explained equity, he was like, oh, I don't believe that. And it's like nobody, and it was kind of seemed like he was unaware that that's what the Democrat Party pushes. It's literally in their platform. So that was pretty amazing when someone confronted Bernie about it, because in their platform right now, it's going to suck when their convention changes if they change this language, because I like referencing it to point out how racist they are. But in their platform, they talk about how they to solve like the disparities or whatever, that they don't want neutral policies as far as race goes. They want to have special privileges for this color and special privileges for that color, and this person is wrong and bad, etc. I saw a TikTok, this guy that I follow, he has a pretty big account. He does a lot of real estate stuff. He did more politics stuff back in the day, and then he kind of just focused on real estate. Now he's doing more political stuff again. But someone like wrote to him and said that they're, I guess, white, and their children don't like them very much, and they have just been indoctrinated by the woke left, and they think that everything that they have, their college degrees and their house and so on, et cetera, is because of white privilege. And they worked very hard to be able to afford the things that they have to provide a better life for their children. And now their children are just convinced that they just have anything because of white privilege, and they want to be the saviors of the minorities and so on. And they've developed this sort of savior complex, and that just white people are evil. And the parents don't know what to do, because they have this big chasm is in their relationship with their children, who think they're evil because they're white. and they're obviously white too. but this is like the destructive mentality that we have going on, that if people like Kamala stays in charge, and if they're rewarded in the election, it's just going to get worse. It's not going to get better. And especially if they have some kind of majority, and they can end the filibuster and then change the Supreme Court and all kinds of different stuff that they want to do, that's just going to, that they claim they're doing to save democracy, which isn't really the case. They just really want to radically transform the country. So she has an awful philosophy. You can't make everyone end up in the same place. People aren't built that way. And just because you look at different outcomes that people have, you can't just go, oh, well, something's gone wrong. There must be some kind of racism. There's systemic racism. There's a disparate impact. Or maybe people make different decisions. Maybe there's different cultural things going on. Like, you can't just look at the conditions of Black Americans and say, oh, it's because of racism here, but you want to ignore all the African immigrants who came over and are educated and are doing well as far as the economy. They came over with a nickel in their pocket or whatever, and was able to thrive for their family and so on. But they're doing well, and the people who've been here for generations aren't doing well. Like, is it the racism, or is there some kind of like cultural kind of drive or family values? It's just something going on. The victim mentality, the hustle mentality that it might vary between them, that's leading to this disparate impact. You're going to tell me Asians aren't discriminated against? I've seen a lot of videos of people just clocking old Asian people online. That's very disturbing. I know we don't talk about hashtag Stop Asian Hate anymore too much, particularly because they noticed a lot of people committing the violence were brown folks. But a lot of them, they do very well. Looking by the numbers, you're going to say that they don't suffer racism? But the issues aren't always, oh, it must be racism because we seek some kind of disparate impact. They're not all in the same place. Must have been racism, good old white privilege that made this happen. Or maybe it's fatherlessness, and maybe that doesn't mean that your father is not necessarily that they're out of your life, but not in your home. That does breed a disruption, and you're at a disadvantage if you're a single mom with your kids that other people don't have, because they have two people maybe working, or one's educating, taking care of the house, other one's getting that bread, and they can partner up and team up, and you have to do everything yourself. So you're fighting with both arms tied behind your back while you take care of your kids, and that's commendable, you taking care of your kids, but you are at a social disadvantage. And you are starting from a different place, but it ain't got nothing to do with racism. Nothing to do with racism. There's so many factors. And so when Kamala Harris puts out these ads. She's like, it's about freedom. I'm running because of freedom and freedom. It sounds like you're talking about government overreach. You're talking about government overreach. You cannot get everyone in the same place unless you rig the game. Unless you rig the game. Last thing I want to talk about before I let you guys go, is that the media came for Trump because he said that Kamala Harris donated to the Minnesota Freedom Fund, bailing out dangerous criminals. They said that this was false. Now, there's already a community note on it. The community note says Kamala Harris promoted the Minnesota Freedom Fund, and the post is still active on X, which I'm sure you guys have probably seen the post before, detailing, hey, go to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. And this was in the midst of like BLM stuff. And Steve Carell, Harry Styles, a bunch of different celebrities promoted it. They raised a lot of money. Now, that particular organization, they don't care what you do. They just don't like cash bail. So they get money and they bail out people. And they unfortunately bailed out someone who went on to go kill someone. And then they said, well, maybe we have to think about our policies. So I like the fact here that the RNC retweeted this news station, CBS News in Minnesota, and said, you clowns literally asked her about it. So how's it not a thing when you clowns literally asked Kamala Harris about the thing that Trump said?
I want to ask you, the Minnesota GOP is holding a press conference this afternoon to criticize you for your support a couple of years ago, before you were the vice president, for something called the Minnesota Freedom Fund that was really set up to help those who were arrested in the aftermath of the George Floyd riots, help them get out. It's since been sort of morphed into something else and has been used to help people get out who've been accused of many other crimes. Do you have any thoughts about this?
Well, first of all, I am a child of parents who marched for civil rights in the 1960s in America. And I have always been and will always be a supporter of peaceful protests.
What is that got to do?
Many peaceful protests over the history of our country have led to an expansion of rights and an expansion of civil rights. So that's where I stand on peaceful protest. And I think that unfortunately what we're seeing is people are playing political games right now. We're 18 days away from midterms. And we have sadly not seen a lack of misinformation and disinformation. And I think this is another one of those examples.
Oh, yes. It's like she was predicting the future, that this will be another example of misinformation. Yes, because Kamala Harris did promote the Minnesota Freedom Fund. It did not exist exclusively to bail out protesters. They just don't like cash bail. So they'll bail out whoever they can. Kamala Harris did her due diligence before putting her name to this stuff. And these people why were they arrested? Why were they arrested? People weren't just arrested for walking around doing nothing, peacefully marching, holding their signs. There were people who were literally rioting, who were committing arson, who were stealing things. There was these flash mob robberies. People died, were killed during these riots. So being like, oh my gosh, they're arresting these people as if there wasn't good reason, which, by the way, apparently Kamala Harris still has an active link. Using her name, make a donation to the Minnesota Freedom Fund. But they're like still kind of active. So it is what it is. But they want to erase history. Now, this is something that's been talked about a lot. Her tweet is still up. So what is the point of lying and saying that Trump is lying about this? We can all check. But you know what? I saw someone on YouTube is like posting like disclaimers about like fact checking stuff about Trump and Kamala. Like Trump did like 10 lies against Kamala in this post. I've never seen any kind of alert like that pop up when Joe Biden said that Trump called neo-Nazis very fine people. I've never seen any sort of alerts like that. So if we say that Kamala Harris was called the border czar, which she was, if we say that they wanted to pick a black woman and that was like a sole reason why they were picking her, she wouldn't have been considered if she wasn't a woman of color. She would have been excluded. So it's not based on her merits, because they wouldn't have gotten her the job. If you say that she's DEI, they're like, that's racist. If you start saying these things, they're going to be to a point where they start dinging your account for like misinformation. Is it going to be like the COVID days? We're like, oh, if it goes against the CDC, then we just have to strike your account. Like, would they start doing that? Like, if it goes against PolitiFact, we're gonna take her stuff down. Could we get to that place? Maybe, because how they treated COVID stuff was just insane. Again, we're gonna have to do a lot of fact checking, guys. So buckle up. Anyway, thank you guys very much for your viewership and your comments. Please go to black2news.com, check out different content, website, articles, videos, etc. If you like what I do here, please consider leaving a donation on the website. It does cost to stream and run my site, all that stuff. And I do need to take care of a couple things and hopefully my computer and everything. So if that's something you guys can help out with, I very much appreciate you. If you want to support other kind of ways, you guys can go to the website, check out different merch and so on. Check out my different books. Find a new book this weekend. I saw a TikTok. Someone asked a question like, if you were in the 17th century and you were black and you had a superpower, what would it be? Like, you're trapped there, which you're like, oh crap, it's 17th century and you're black. But you have a superpower. What would it be? And my book doesn't take place in the 17th century, but I thought it was an interesting question because I do have a book about a slave in the Civil War era who has superpowers, and her superpower, I'll just spoil it and say that she can teleport, so it's very, very handy there. So anyway, it's kind of like X-Men meets the Civil War. So I recommend you guys checking that one out. That's what people ask for book recommendations. It's usually the ones that I recommend because I don't think you will have read something like it, and it's just pretty neat story. And so go check it out. It's one of my favorites. And I got nonfiction stuff too, but go ahead, pick up a read this weekend. God bless you guys, and I'll see you then on Monday.